This lesson is on code formatting rules. Well, that doesn't sound terribly exciting. Formatting code, what could that be good for? Let's take a look. Here you have a form, just like we've seen before. Something that's going to calculate the number of hours we've slept, give us some different messages depending on how many hours we slept in the day, what year we were born. Let's put that in. Submit information. My name's Steve, slept that many years, planning for retirement, sleep too much, just like we've seen before. Let's take a quick look at the code. The form looks pretty much like what we had before, but let's look at the PHP. This looks a little bit different. First name, I'm gathering data, I can kind of see what's going on here. Okay, things are kind of skewed, they're not formatted very nicely. Let's look down at our if statement. Oh boy, try to follow this. If greater than 50, this, if, print, else, print, bracket, bracket, bunch of white spaces, stuff down here. Okay, if you have a problem with this code, it would be very hard to debug it. It'd be very hard to see what's going on. One of the more common errors to make, especially when you nest an if statement, is to have a missing end curly brace somewhere. Maybe one of the if statements that's nested within inside another if statement, or maybe at the very end. But it's very hard to spot with code that looks like this. Whereas code that looked the way I had it before was very well structured. You could see a missing curly brace just in the glance of an eye by the way the code was lined up. Let's go ahead and realign this. Now, I've been indenting after the PHP tag. That isn't strictly necessary, just something I chose to do for you to make it a little bit clearer. But I've got this indented, lined up. Now, this code I want to bring up and have everything be indented along the same way. This statement, there's no reason for this to be all the way over here. Let's bring it inside. Same with a print statement. So far, so good. This is pretty easy. Now, our first if. This is where the rules really begin to take place. We've got it lined up. But here's the rule. As soon as you hit your first left curly brace, line it up under the I in the if, and then the code below it should be indented another tab. Or you can use a couple of spaces. You can use something that's consistent. I like the tab. It should be indented one tab until we hit another right curly brace, and then we'll bring our code back a tab from then on. If we hit another left curly brace before then, we'll tab again. Okay, so watch. By example, this should be easier. Now look, I've got another if statement, but I haven't hit another left or right curly brace, so that says this should be lined up right under the P. I'm going to add a blank line, just because I like to do that. Sometimes that makes it easier to see. So where does this left curly brace go? Remember, we want these braces lined up under the I in the if statement. This is another left curly brace, so that tells me I've got to indent twice now. So this code comes here. It's indented again under the curly brace, so it's farther than this one, because this was just under one left curly brace. This one's under two, so it's indented even farther. Let's get rid of these blank lines. There's just too many. There's no reason for them. This closing curly brace should line up under the one that it went with. The else, the E in the else, lines up under that. The next opening curly brace lines up under that E. Look at these. We've got two in a row like that. There's no way you in a glance can tell what's going to happen. Because I have a left curly brace, this goes in. Notice here, when I had this one in, I hit a right curly brace. That means the else comes back underneath. Once again, a closing curly brace lines up under there. What about this one? Well, that goes with this one. I can see in a glance. I can bring my cursor down and see there's no curly brace there. Let's bring that so it lines up under there. Is there any more code? By Jove, it looks like there is. There's an else clause. Let's get rid of these extra blank lines. Once in a while, a single blank line like I used up here, that's okay. That can make things easier to read. You just don't want to go crazy with it and have 4 or 5 or 10 blank lines there for no good reason. So the E all lines up under there. There. Now, after this, it's an opening curly brace, so that means the code gets indented once underneath it until we hit this. We did hit this. Okay, and we may be done with our if statement. In a glance, we can kind of see that. Here's the first if, the first block of code, and else, and the second block of code. Okay, and that kind of winds it up. So you can see that everything lines up perfectly now and makes it much easier to do debugging later on as things get more complicated. You can see the structure of your program.